debt limit by $1.9 trillion. That's a T, trillion dollars, in case you thought we were joking about the debt issue. There were 217 yes votes on the rule, 212 no's. As expected, not a single Republican voted for it. The new debt limit is now $14.3 trillion. You just saw on our favorite website, debtclock.org, we are still at 12.3, but we're going to go up to 14.3. All right, so let's talk a little bit about this and also about financial reform and where we stand on that. Joining us is Republican Congressman Ed Royce of California, senior member of the House Financial Services Committee. Congressman Royce, good to have you with us.
Thank you.
You voted against this, but you knew it would pass.
Yes, I think it's irresponsible to vote to increase that debt ceiling unless you're going to do something about what's driving the increase. And the problem that we have right now, you saw Moody's yesterday come out with a report where they said the AAA rating on the treasuries is called into question unless we do something about these unsustainable deficits going into the future. You don't see that as part of the budget, as part of the president's plan. As a matter of fact, it compounds the problem, and we see even in the out years 5% of GDP, numbers that are 5%, and basically it takes 3% to get into the EU, right? So we are in excess of the standards to get into the EU, even in the out years on this deficit. We're not tackling the problem.
Are you willing to cut Medicare then?
What we should be looking at doing is across the board figuring out ways that we bring this budget into balance, and we should not have a budget that's 10 years out without it being closer to balance or without a glide path which reduces this deficit. So the alternative budgets that the Republicans are putting up eventually leads to the elimination of these deficits. And that's the dialogue we need to have with the president. He's going to be out of office, let's say 8 years out or maybe 4 years out, but 8 years out, he's out of office, and the deficit and the budget he gives us calls for a 5% of GDP.
And certainly that's an issue, but I mean, yes. I must say, sir, that and maybe I asked it a bit to be provocative.
I'm a deficit hawk. I have voted to cut just about everything at one point or another. I'm at the table. The question for me is, how can you increase spending 24% this year, 8% in the appropriations bill next year, and add on top of that a new entitlement spending on health care and not expect this to be a major problem?
Well, the president says he tried to cut Medicare in health care, and that was the thing that the Republicans resisted, which was actually the spending cuts included.
Wait a minute. The idea that he's coming forward with a new entitlement for a government-run health plan, the reality is that that entitlement is not going to reduce costs. Let me just assure you that the long-term consequences of that would be a major hit. It will bend the curve up on spending. Every time I've heard this in the past where a president has said, don't worry, this new entitlement will actually save money, the exact opposite has been the long-term consequence, and I certainly believe that's the case here. I agree with the analysis that the Wall Street Journal did on this that show that the true costs over the next 10 years are probably more likely $2 trillion. So I think we have to get down to not constantly growing government, but instead figuring out ways to grow the private sector. And the only way to do that is not to suck all the money out into the government.
Fair point. Let me just ask this question, though, and I'm curious about this. As you say, you're a deficit hawk.
Yes.
Earmarks, some may say, may not add up to that much, but they mean a whole lot, and they stand for a whole lot in terms of whether people who are elected to serve in Washington care about deficits. Would you sign on to something if it was, I signed this and I will not ask for a single earmark from my district, that my district is willing to not get that special road or special senior center or whatever it is, because we care about America's debt future? Senator
McCain and I co-chaired the Pork Busters Coalition. I've got a lot of scars, and so does John McCain, going after these earmarks. And it's about 2% of the spending, and I'm willing to continue to go after earmarks. But at some point, we have to do something about entitlements. And you certainly can't add new entitlements for health care, which envision the government basically taking over that share of the market, and not expect it to have this profound effect on the anticipation of what future deficits will be. It's going to add to the deficit in the future.
All right, Congressman Royce, thank you very much. We appreciate your taking the time. And next on the show, human piggy bank. Could the passenger next to you be